Welcome, Mom. My name is Sam. I am a dedicated matrescence educator, a passionate advocate of motherhood, and a mom just like you. On this channel, we dive deep into the world of matrescence and all of the incredible yet often very challenging transitions of motherhood. I believe that you deserve to enjoy this. I believe that you deserve to be seen. And most importantly, I believe that you deserve to find yourself through motherhood instead of losing yourself to it. So hit that subscribe button and let's jump into today's video talking all about mom shame. Editing Sam here. I apologize for how low energy I am in this video and how kind of all over the place it is. I just got my period this morning. I do not feel well. I do not feel like myself, and my brain was definitely not fully functioning. So please bear with me. I hope that you still enjoy it. I do think I get my point across, and at the very end, I put some bloopers in because I got interrupted by some birds today, and it's really funny in retrospect. All right, enjoy, and my apologies. If you're a mom, if you know a mom, if you've been around someone talking about a mom, you probably know what mom shaming is. It's a more cultural term than anything. It is just the act of criticizing or really talking harshly about another mom's parenting style, parenting choices, or really who they are as a mom. A lot of times, mom shaming occurs when one person's parenting style is at odds with another, or parenting choices are at odds with another, a la, I could never do that, or I would never do that. I've talked about this a little bit on Instagram at _welcomemama, and if you want the TLDR, you can head over there. But I want to talk about it more in depth because with over 60% of women, and some research says over 70% of women having experienced mom shame, I think there's a lot to be talked about, and I think we can do something to reduce it. So in this video, we're going to talk about where mom shaming most commonly occurs, who is the culprit of mom shaming, who are the people most commonly mom shaming moms, and then we'll talk about how we can reduce the impact of mom shaming by changing the way we talk to moms and then how we perceive comments as moms. So let's start off with some of the most common areas where mom shaming occurs. And keep in mind that mom shame often occurs when parenting decisions are at odds with another's. So these are all areas where parenting decisions are present and there are a lot of choices to be made, and a lot of those choices often have really strong opinions behind them. First off, I'm sure you won't be surprised that feeding is usually a really sensitive place where we feel mom shame. Whether that's bottle feeding, breastfeeding, formula feeding, whatever that decision may be, oftentimes it's out of our control and oftentimes it's at odds with someone else's. Number two, the decision to work or stay home. I think we've all heard the comment of, oh, I could never leave my babies, or I could never stay home alone with my kids all day. I would go crazy, or I would be so bored. Number three, sleep decisions, sleep training, co-sleeping, sleep hygiene, sleep routines. Number four, public behavior, how your child is acting in public. The age-old comment of, oh, I would never let my kids act like that. Which as a parent, you usually don't let your kids do anything. They make their own choices because they are their own human, and that the role of parenting is to help them make those decisions over time when their brains are able to reason, which as young children, they are not. Number five, milestone measures. Like, shouldn't they be able to roll over by now? Or shouldn't they be sitting up by now? Or shouldn't he be talking by now? Number six, body comments, whether that's a comment on someone's body postpartum or in pregnancy, or just comments about your own body in front of someone else. Number seven, questioning parenting decisions. Like, shouldn't you be doing that? Number eight, comparing parenting decisions. Oh, well, I never did that, or I would never do that. Number nine, birth comments, whether that's the place of birth, the means of birth, medication versus not medication. Oh, we know the birth ones. Number 10, personal life choices, maybe how they dress, how they act, the music they listen to, the people they associate with, how they spend their free time, things like that. Now that's a short list. There are a million different ways that mom shame can occur, and I would encourage you to comment below different areas where you maybe have seen mom shame occur, but that's just the ones that are top of my head and where I've seen it happen most frequently. And here's the thing, mom shame isn't helpful. It's not really a great way to promote positive behavior. It's not a guiding principle. Oftentimes, mom shaming is just painful. It's actually a punishment, which we know that punishment does not promote positive behavior change. It's not encouraging, it's not motivating, it's often just a personal attack. which we know that many times when we feel personally attacked, we just shut down and we aren't able to change. We just shut down. And some people even dig their heels in and stand by that behavior even more. Furthermore, a lot of the times, those things that moms are shamed for are out of their control. And when we shame someone for something that's out of their control, it increases the anxiety and the pain they feel around that thing, when we should be encouraging them to accept it and to let go of that anxiety and remind them that this was out of their control and that they did the best they could. I'm going to put up this graphic from my Instagram that has a list of where we most commonly receive mom shame. And as you'll notice, it's typically from people who are in our inner circle, people like our family members or our spouse's family members or our friends, all people in that social circle, our inner orbit, who we have attachment to. And when we experience shame from someone who we have an attachment to, it is much more damaging and it can really impact our self-esteem and our self-worth. And in a time, especially in early motherhood, when you're already feeling like, can I do this? That is very detrimental. Some of you might be screaming that, well, yeah, but what if the baby is in danger? What if the behavior really needs to change? Well, that's a horse of a different color. That's where intervention is the most important thing, and the means of it, I would say, doesn't matter as much. But if the behavior is objectively wrong, and if it is something that mom could change or should change, things like maybe covering their bassinet when they're out in the sun, there are ways that you can encourage mom to change that behavior that does not include mom shame. Because yes, mom shame might make her change that behavior in that instance because they want to do what's best for their baby, but then you're also damaging mom. And the way moms are treated in early motherhood, they remember for the rest of their life. So avoiding the negative impact we can put on moms in that really crucial period is so important. So here's where we're going to go more into my own opinion on how we can better manage this. And we're going to start off by talking about why people mom shame and where those comments most commonly come from. And then we'll talk about how as moms we can reduce the impact it has on us. Because we're never going to be able to change what people say to us. We're never going to be able to control what someone else says, but we can control the impact that it has on us and how we perceive it. So first of all, why do people mom shame? Number one, like we said, it's often when parenting decisions are at odds with another person's. And so when we see a parenting decision that is different than ours, it can make us question our own. Sometimes it's like, I didn't even know about that, or oh, I wish I would have known about that. And rather than feel naive or feel like you did the wrong thing, doubling down on your decision and saying, oh, well, I didn't do that, or wow, that's stupid, that can be a defense mechanism to not feel those negative things that you are feeling already. And second, along with that, when we see someone make a decision that is different than our own, our decision can feel invalidated. Like, oh, if they're choosing this thing, is what I did wrong. But remember, putting someone else's decision down does not validate your decision. Your decision was your decision, and you have to be confident in that decision. Undermining someone else does not do that. You have to look at your decision and recognize why you did it, why was it best for your family, and then be okay with that. And if watching someone else's decision does invalidate yours and you're like, oh man, I should have done that, then now you know, you've learned something. You can't go back and change it, and there's no need to put someone down in that moment. Number three, along with putting someone down, one of the age-old things that humans do is put someone down to lift themselves up. And if that's why you're mom shaming someone, just don't do that. It does not work. You might feel good for 5 seconds, but hopefully you'll feel like shit later because you did a bad thing. And number four, which is my biggest hope here, is that we want to help. And sometimes the way that we help and sometimes the way we give advice can come off as shaming. Like, oh, I would never do that. What I did was, and it doesn't come across the way we mean it to, or it's like, a great example of this is I had a certain product for my son, and I told someone like they could borrow my product, and rather than borrow my product, they were like, oh no, we don't use X, Y, and Z ingredients. And I was like, oh crap, am I doing something wrong? I was doing something wrong. And we'll talk about how I could perceive that differently in a second, but those kind of comments, maybe it was helpful. Maybe it was, oh, I shouldn't use those ingredients. Good to know. But it was, the way I received it wasn't correct. And again, we'll talk about that. But there's ways we can say those kind of things that are helpful. So first thing is to ask. Always ask before doling out advice. Unless that person has come to you asking for advice, ask, can I offer you my opinion? Can I give a suggestion?
Can I tell you what worked for us? Can I tell you something that I learned? Those are all ways that you are then allowing them to open the door instead of dumping this thing on them. Number 2 is acknowledge that everyone makes different decisions. And you could say, everybody is different. This is what worked for me. What works for you will be something different, but always acknowledge that you are not the authority, because you're not. The mom is the authority on their child. And when we come across as, oh, I would never, or you should not do that, you're taking on that and you're undermining her authority and her motherhood, and that's not okay. Number 3, ask yourself if it's necessary. Do you really need to say that thing? And is it going to be helpful? More often than not, it's not going to be helpful, and that person's not going to change their decision. So ask yourself, should I say that thing? And then if the answer is yes, ask yourself, how do I best say that thing versus just spitting it out? If you do say something that comes off as mom shaming, have the awareness and to apologize. To say, I'm sorry if that offended you. I didn't mean it for it to. I just wanted to help. I just wanted to offer advice. Because a lot of times these decisions come from really, again, trying to help. And for us knowing what we went through and not wanting someone else to go through that thing. And there's a lot of times we can't do that. Moms need to make the decision that's best for them, and that their kid is not your kid. What you went through or what you experienced isn't necessarily what they will experience or what they're trying to work through. So just acknowledging that I'm sorry that I maybe offended you. I'm sorry if that wasn't right for you. That is a really important thing and can really help moms to move past that feeling of shame, because they know that, okay, it wasn't about me. And I would also add to that, examine why you feel the need to make these comments. Where are you in your motherhood journey? What are you self-conscious about? What are you grieving? What do you need to move past in order to stop making moms feel poor about their decisions? Because a lot of times we have these things that we carry with us that we aren't able to forgive ourselves for or move on from, and so we keep trying to put that person down, and that's just not okay. Not that person, but people in general. And with that, let's talk about moms on the receiving end. And I think we need to do that as well as moms, is to, one, examine why we feel the mom shame around that thing. Do we have some self-consciousness around it? Are we insecure in our decision? Are we maybe just a little more sensitive, because motherhood is a sensitive thing. Motherhood is a very personal thing, and especially in those early days of motherhood when we're trying to navigate who we are and what we're supposed to do, it can feel really, really damaging when we have comments that feel undermining, that feel shameful. It can be really, really hard. And so examining maybe why you feel that way and what you need to work through can be helpful at reducing the amount of impact that has on you. Then also there are a few other things I think we can do in the moment to make it a little bit easier. And I'll give an example of a time where I felt a lot of mom shame was in the early days of motherhood. My mom used to say things like, oh honey, he's so hungry, or oh honey, he's so cold. And just the way she said that made me feel like she was questioning whether I knew what my son needed or not. And especially with my son's severe feeding issues, I knew he was hungry, and I knew that I couldn't figure out how to feed him, especially and like early on. Those first 5 weeks were first 7 weeks were very challenging. And I felt like I was supposed to be able to breastfeed. I kept trying to breastfeed. He couldn't latch. It wasn't working. And it was so traumatic. And so to have something like, oh honey, he's hungry, it's like, I know, and I don't know what to do about it. And that felt so shameful because it was such a sensitive topic for me. But what I needed to do is step, 2 in this perceived mom shame list is consider the source. My mom is an Enneagram 9, which I know all of my friends are eye rolling right now because I talk about the Enneagram all the time, but it's the best way to characterize my mom. She is a 9 through and through. She is a peacekeeper. She just wants everyone to be happy and cared for. Her love languages are acts of service and gift giving. Like, she is just a giver. It's where she gets her joy, is giving and receiving a thank you. And when she says those things, she really is just trying to make sure that my son is comfortable, and she's trying to help me to meet his needs. And for me to then look at that and recognize my mom's not trying to mom shame me, my mom is trying to help me, it makes it a lot easier for me to move past that feeling, to say, okay, you're internalizing this because you're sensitive around this, because this is a hard topic for you. And I did ask my mom to say that a little bit differently, to not say it in the way she was saying, and that did help. But I still was able to consider the source and consider my mom and say, I know she's not saying this to hurt me. I know she's saying this to help me. And that helped to reduce the shame around that. Along with that, consider the motive. First of all, a lot of mom shame comes from what we talked about, that sense of needing to validate your own decision. And when you can see that in someone, when you can see that they're maybe putting down your decision because they feel self-conscious or insecure in theirs, you can have a little more empathy, because we've all been there. We all know what that's like to not know if you're making the right decision. Recognize that maybe they're just trying to make themselves feel better about that decision, and give them that grace. Maybe that motive is because they're really trying to help, and to look at that from that sense. Maybe they just didn't know how to say that thing, and you know they could say it better next time, but just say, okay, they were trying to help, didn't really come across well, but thank you anyway. And then sometimes it is to harm you, and if you feel like someone is saying something just to hurt you, then that's another place where you can have empathy, because if they feel like they need to put you down just to feel better, then that's a them problem and not a you problem. And lastly, this kind of goes along with examining yourself, but do your best to either get confident in your decisions or accept that maybe you made the wrong decisions. We are all going to make wrong decisions in our parenting journey, but when we can accept that that wasn't the right thing and maybe next time I'll do a better job and I can learn from that, that's power, and that helps reduce the impact that certain comments would have on you. And lastly, when you can be confident in a decision and say, hey, maybe this wasn't ideal, but it was ideal for my family and it worked out and it's all good. That is where you can get, again, more power from being confident, and you don't question your decision when someone questions you. So that is it for today's video. If you have any other comments on mom shame, experiences you had, or what has helped you work through it, I would love for you to comment that down below. If you want more information, you can visit my Instagram @_welcome mama. You can visit my website, welcome-mama.com, for more resources for my mom era program and my journal. Everything else is over there. And as always, welcome mama. Thank you for being here. You deserve to enjoy this. Number 5. And so when you see someone maybe share something or say something that is what the fuck was that? Okay. What is this?
What?
Listen.
The birds?
The birds?
There's a bunch of them. Yeah, see, there's a bunch. They were all over our garage, all over our trees. And there's just like, I don't know, 40 birds.
God.
Maybe I shut them.
I don't know, but it's...
Okay, they're just everywhere. They're eating.
Oh, it's over.